Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. We're going to talk about the law, or justice, or freedom, or reality. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Let's call it justice theory, okay? Legal theory. I had a friend whose father was a judge, and one of his learning experiences as a teenager, and I think that he didn't quite get the lesson. I've known a few federal judges, and some of them are pretty deep thinkers, and my friend may have missed the actual lesson involved in this one. My friend was doing 60 miles an hour in a 55 zone, and he got pulled over, and he was rather annoyed because he wasn't traveling faster than traffic surrounding him. He was not passing anyone, but he was being passed. The police officer in question, however, chose to pull him over and not pull anyone else over. And my friend thought this was unfair, which it was. And he was the questioning from his father was, were you breaking the law? Is it about fairness or is it about the law? Were you in fact breaking the law? It doesn't matter if law enforcement singled you out because they don't like your car, they don't like your haircut, they don't like your bumper stickers, they know who you are and they just want to mess with you. Whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter what the reason is, the police singled you out. You were, in fact, breaking the law. What's important here? Well, there's kind of this is really deep. It's a speeding ticket, but this is really deep, important stuff. Is the law important? Is the enforcement important? Are both of those things important? Okay, there's a lot of crap flying around in the country about, targeted enforcement, about the crime of being black while driving and such, which is honestly, it's mostly false. I've lived in the South and I've lived in northern cities, and the stark difference in actual racism from the people who claim not to be racist, well, different topic. So here's the problem. Everybody else is doing 60 to 65. Some people are doing 70 on this road, and the police officer pulls him over. Well, technically we have a law, but then we have a practice, okay? And if the practice of the society is that much different than the law, you can't really claim that the law is valid just because it's the law. You have to work within the structure of reality. So, is it injust to pull over one of the people who's going slower just because they're still going faster than the mandated speed limit? I would say yes. I would say that this is actually, in fact, a big problem. This is using the law as an ability to target or hurt someone. This is literally weaponizing the law. Now, that's one of the big fallacies that we have in the population. Okay, law is very complicated for various reasons. It's also very mechanical, which is one of the reasons why it's complicated. And many people want to weaponize the law against their opponents in life. So it's very common for people to think that the law is magical. Magical thinking is very common in the regular, normal populace. Something happened at the job that you don't like. The law, I can sue. You don't know what the laws are. You don't know what fairness really is. You're looking at it from purely an inside view, and you have a magical thinking, the law. Or you know a little bit more about the law, and you have someone who you don't like, someone who you want to hurt, and then you weaponize the law in order to hurt that person. Law enforcement does that. Law enforcement absolutely does that. They don't do it all the time. It's not everyone. It is human nature, and it does happen. Weaponizing the law is very much a thing. Often you're weaponizing the law not against an individual that you know, but sort of as a general concept. And that's where this being pulled over because the car looked wrong, or someone had a bad day. That's where this comes in. This is important because it's not an individual attack. The officer was not attacking my friend. My friend got singled out unfairly, unjustly. Maybe unjustly? Definitely unfairly. These are different phrases. Okay? But it wasn't an individual animosity. It was, however, weaponizing the law. All right, I am 5.5 minutes into this. This is kind of complicated and hard to get my voice around. We have a justice problem in the United States, which is structural, like it's part of the way our justice system works. Now, big key element from the speeding ticket. The law is not fair. The law is the law. This is something you hear about quite often. You know, the law is what it is. It's not fair. It's just the law. We work with it. We change it. It evolves over time. It gets better, hopefully, worse at times. But the law itself is not fair. It's not supposed to be fair. Life is not supposed to be fair. However, government application of the law must be fair for the government to be valid. And this is the key. This is where I think my friend really didn't learn the deeper lesson that was being presented, because I've heard this story in detail a couple of times. And there are things that are reported that the father said, that the directions the argument went, where I think that the application, the government action, was manifestly unfair. And my friend can't quite wrap his head around it. He's very legalistic. Legal positivism could have been written about him. Like, the whole concept could be framed about him. And I think this is one of the key elements here. One of the driving lessons was this incident. And this is what you have. The law is, for him, inherently powerful, unassailable, the basis of society. And it's really not. Law is important. We are a society of laws. We are a nation of laws. And that is important because those laws are a framework for how we change our society without violence. That's the key part about nation of laws. It's not a nation of nomists, people who follow the law mechanically, legalistically, without thought, because that's the law. The law is the mechanism by which you are saved, using the religious version of nomism. The law is the agency, that set of rules by which you function in society, and only that. Legalism, nomism. That's not what the law actually is. The law is a framework. We work within that framework mostly. We also work outside of that framework because the framework has to be changed and be able to handle things that are outside of it. So we bring things in and out, and it's a process. Law is fundamentally a process, but it's not fair. Trying to achieve fairness and justice is a big goal of the development, the practice of law should be. I would say, I'm saying is, but I should be. But government application of law must, for the government to be valid, that application must be fair. And that's the key. I think that's the key lesson about the speeding ticket. It wasn't fair. My friend's initial reaction, it's not fair, is absolutely correct. He could not justify, in keeping with his legalistic thinking, how that could be. His father took him down the path. If you're going to be a legalist, if you believe that judges are mechanical Turks, if you believe that jury nullification is a really horrible, bad idea and tantamount to a revolution because the law is something that determines what the jury must do. If you're in that kind of legalistic space, then you can't rail that an application of the law is unfair. You can't argue against it. You have to come to terms with why the law would be bad, what could be evil, what could be wrong with it. And what is wrong with it, most of the time, is going to be unfair application. Our justice system, as it has evolved in the United States, is fundamentally unfair and unjust, non-just. I think that's a really key element to understanding a lot of what we're having as social problems, including breakdown in social trust. Our social trust is not at levels that it should be. A lot of that is isolation. The internet, the computer world, the cell phones, and the social media has led us to distance ourselves in large part. We don't have the dinner parties where we figure out how to interact with each other without being dicks to each other. We don't have that at the same level that we used to. We don't have the fraternal organizations. We don't go to clubs, the Rotarians, the VFW, the American Legion, the Elks, the Eagles. We don't do that and deal with people that you may not agree with, but you're part of a group, an organization. You learn to trust each other to some extent, to deal with each other's foibles to some extent, and to forgive and tolerate, which you cannot do when you isolate yourself from everyone who's different from you. Provincialism in politics is a growing problem. Social trust it's a big deal, And I think that our legalism is eroding that as well, but I also think that our justice system has developed, bring this back around, to an unjust beingness. Like it's not one thing. It's not a single entity. That's actually part of the problem. It's not a single entity. The judicial branch of government is the federal judges, essentially, as opposed to the attorney general and the law enforcement, which are executive branch. But we call this the justice system. We talk about the justice system in Congress as well. When in the 90s when Biden and Feinstein were advocating for massive penalties, it was judicial reform. Okay. So we have a justice system that is not the judicial branch, but the judicial branch doesn't rein it in either. The judicial branch, a lot of judges and a lot of lawyers and a lot of juries do act as if they are mere mechanical engines of the law. So for my friend, jury nullification is a very scary and extreme concept, okay? And for a lot of people, this is true. The idea that a jury can take an individual case and say, no, the law just does not work here. The way it works, no. That's just scary. That's horrible, horrifying to them, okay? Because they're very legalist. And it is the law that matters. The judge and the jury are mere agents of reading and applying the law according to the facts. There is no justice. There's no fairness. There's no outside influence. Now, this is going to sound a little funny because it also ties into the idea of living constitution. Well, the law changes depending on social interpretation. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. And that's the thing, is that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about applications of law in justice and fairness, not in finding... Living constitutionalists are almost always involved in trying to weaponize the law. There's a big difference there. They're trying to weaponize the law against a group or a faction or a party. They're not trying to de-weaponize the law or increase fairness of government action within the law. Using the word justice is very difficult, because justice in this context with the Living Constitution movement usually means social justice, which is not equal justice, and that's why we're not using justice so much. So our justice system, since I'm not using justice, I'll just say justice. Our justice system is broken. One of the reasons it's broken is because government application of the law is not fair. It is targeted. It is biased. It's biased in all cases against the accused, or in favor of an election campaign or something. There's a bias. It's not fairly applied. It's not fairly applied to begin with, and then it's not fairly applied in courts when you're doing in-court battles. It does not provide equal treatment under the law. It very much depends on your educational background, your financial resources, sometimes your luck. Like, there's no fairness involved. Our justice system has deep, deep issues. And a lot of it comes down to legalism. You know, you look at a court case and you're like, okay, is this guy actually doing something bad? Doesn't matter. The law is the law is the law is the law. The problem is that when you weaponize the law, you try to find ways for the law to not apply to your side, but to apply to his side. And it's a huge mess. You get a speeding ticket in a situation where you are the slowest traffic on the road, but you're still speeding. It's not fair. It's legal. But even then, you have to question the validity of a law that no one follows. Is the law valid? Then you have to ask, is the government valid? Do you trust laws? Are you a nation of laws? Do your speed limits reflect that? Does your behavior with regard to laws reflect that? Our tax laws, our employment laws, we have a lot of laws that are impediments to life, and which we generally ignore in our personal lives or in our business lives, but then we want to weaponize them and apply them to other people. Government fairness in the application of law is crucial, absolutely crucial to the validity of that government. I don't think I've given you anything to actually take home and say, hey, I know something. But I hope I've given you something to question, to think about. If you get a speeding ticket, while you're not the fastest person on the road, while people are passing you, while other people are not getting speeding tickets for doing the same thing, it may or may not be a problem with the law. It's definitely a problem with the application and enforcement of the law. If the legal situation, such as the speeding ticket and large amounts of traffic, is such that you cannot fairly enforce the law, well, how can you claim your government is valid? Stay sideways.